This is Hammett.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show and get ad-free and bonus episodes. And we wanted to start off before we got to the stories with a wonderful shout out to Isaac Sampson, one of the people in our Facebook group for the podcast.
And I've met him. He came out when I was in Missoula.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Isaac posted something on Facebook that basically said that they recently testified at the Montana legislature to encourage people to vote no on basically a bathroom bill. Isaac said this bill would require me to use women's facilities, which would put me in danger and make a lot of women uncomfortable. But the thing that really got to both of us is that Isaac said, I'm posting here because without this podcast, I don't think I would have had the courage to stand up and speak publicly, let alone being vulnerable as I was. Thanks to Jessica and Hammett for encouraging us all to get involved at our local levels. You have inspired at least one friendly atheist.
Oh, it made my whole year.
Yeah.
He's a good one. He's a good egg, that Isaac.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and for doing what you do.
And honestly, like, this stuff is incredible and important. And if you feel like you are as brave as Isaac is and want to make a change in your small neck of the woods, then I encourage you to do so.
Right. Let's start with this story today that involves a pastor who got fired for a very interesting reason. And it got a lot of traction this week because NPR's Frank Langfitt wrote a whole article on it. But it actually dates back to November. Basically, after the election, there's this progressive church in North Carolina, Myers Park Baptist. Again, progressive church where if you go to their website right now, the front homepage of the church says, open to all. Inclusivity, community, spirituality, justice. And their logo is all the colors of the rainbow.
Oh.
So, okay, fine. There's a lot of not Southern
Baptist church.
Not
Okay.
Southern Baptist, but there are a lot of progressive Baptist churches. So at this church in North Carolina, the pastor of that church, Ben Boswell, right after the election, gave a sermon that pointed out correctly, I would argue, to the congregation that this is not going to go well, Trump's election. Things are going to get very bad. I'm going to play for you a segment of the sermon. It was only about 20 minutes long, but I want to play a segment of it, then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
One of the reasons we grieve today is because we've been told quite clearly that the election of Donald Trump will lead to the crucifixion of people we love. It will lead to the crucifixion of immigrant families, women in need of reproductive rights, transgender and non-binary people, sick people in need of health care, government workers clinging to a job, poor people in need of resources. And so we grieve today with our entire body for those who we love.
Jesus.
But our faith also teaches us something else.
Uh-oh.
No, it's okay.
It teaches us that every crucifixion needs a witness. We can witness to the truth of what is happening. We can speak truth to power. We can say, this is wrong. We can advocate for those who are being crucified by the empire. Every crucifixion needs a witness, because even if we can't save everybody or keep everyone off a cross, we can make sure the world knows what's happening to them.
Wow.
And no one can look away. We can make sure that the victims know that we love them, that God loves them, that they don't deserve this. And we can make sure there is someone alongside them so they won't be alone no matter what happens.
So you can hear the reception that this guy's getting in the room.
Ooh, that got me.
Like, you don't have to
You
don't have to be a Christian to appreciate what he's saying. And whatever, in his religious language, everything he said has turned out to be accurate. I mean, in the couple of weeks since the inauguration, Trump and Elon Musk and a whole bunch of spineless, horrible Republicans have allowed Trump to basically gut civil rights protections, especially for trans people and immigrants, while quite quickly dismantling as much of the government as possible. They're treating the government as the enemy without having understanding of what the government entails. They're creating chaos everywhere. Like, that's the point. They're basically like a wildfire that's just going crazy with the U.S. government. So none of this would be surprising to anyone who's been paying attention to Trump for the past decade. But also, again, I told you what this church is like. That sermon would not be out of place, I would imagine, at that sort of church, right? Like,
Yeah,
they're all about inclusivity and
They got
welcoming
that rainbow.
people. They got the rainbow. So it wasn't out of line or surprising. He's telling them the truth, and you could hear the applause at the end of that section of the sermon.
I feel like a butt is coming.
There is a but coming, but like they liked the sermon too.
Yeah.
But what happened is a few weeks after he gave that sermon, the board of that church voted 17-3 to basically fire him.
Cool.
And what NPR was able to do this week is obtain audio of the meeting where they decided to fire him. No! Yeah. And so now, instead of just relying on the pastor talking about it or church leaders saying,
Are we going to listen to it right now?
No, we don't.
Oh, God damn
They
it.
didn't actually post a lot of the audio, but they did explain what was on it. But one of the things they said is, they talk in their discussion about attendance problems at the church and the idea that Ben Boswell, quote, has been given every chance to change his words and actions to appeal to a broader audience, but has not been successful in doing so. Apparently, one of the deacons, one of the church leaders said, we have got to put more butts in the seats. And to some extent, I kind of understand that. Like, a church is a business. It's why they should be taxed, maybe.
Yeah.
But if they don't have customers, it means they can't pay their staff. You do have to get money coming in. But to blame that on this guy's preaching and not larger sociological trends that are pushing away from organized religion, especially one that's not a cult.
Or even just understanding that, like, sometimes the truth is not the most profitable thing and the right thing isn't the thing that's going to make you rich. Have you ever thought about that?
By the way, Ayaan Hirsi Ali today was just announced. Remember, she decided to become a Christian now?
How's she doing?
She just got a book deal to talk about how she loves Jesus.
Shocking. God damn it, that was my plan.
I know. All of our retirement funds
That's
are now
truly, I was
gone.
like, okay, when I'm like 55.
But yeah, like sometimes speaking the truth and talking about this stuff in an honest way, if you want to get a crowd in, just tell them how amazing Trump is and you will find all sorts of people. Are they good people? No. But that's the point. Like, this guy believes this stuff with conviction. He's doing it from a place of faith.
Yeah.
And that is, as far as I can tell, what this church is founded on. So I don't really understand this idea that he's not bringing more people into the fold. That seems like a not him issue because he's doing exactly what the church wanted.
Yeah, and like you said, it's also just a sign of the times that's happening, and they are just raging against the dying of the light over there.
Yeah. And again, the churches that are most hurt by the move away from organized religion are not mega churches or Southern Baptist conservative churches. Mm-hmm. It's the more mainstream Protestant ones that do try to do a Jesus loves everybody thing, because that's not as compelling a message as God wants you to support Republicans. So that's the way it's been going. Every mainstream Protestant denomination seems to be just losing numbers every year.
Yeah.
So if they had a pastor who's living out their stated values from the pulpit, I don't know why you would blame him and him alone for the attendance problems.
Well, because it sounds like they're looking for a scapegoat.
Sure. Since any replacement you get for this guy, isn't that person going to preach pretty much the same message? Or do you not like the message?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, it seems like these people would be happier if they had, I don't know, a larger MAGA-obsessed congregation than a smaller, loving one. And in fact, the NPR piece pointed out that some church members felt that this guy was a little too radical for them. Deacon Robert Doolin said many people who had left the church in recent years had complained about the 44-year-old pastor's heavy focus on social and racial justice. Doolin paraphrased what he said he had heard over and over from those who had quit the parish. Quote, "I am tired of being indicted because I'm white. I'm tired of being banged over the head every week about immigrants and LGBTQ, and I just want to come to church and be encouraged." One 73-year-old woman, longtime church member.
People are fucking dum-dums.
Yeah. This 73-year-old church member said she heard the same thing from other outgoing parishioners and knew what they meant. Quote, "I was ready for less guilt trip and more love." She says she's not leaving.
Less guilt. Have you ever heard of Christianity? Can I introduce you to my friend Catholicism? Because there you shall find all the guilt you need.
Right. But again, if you listen to that sermon he just gave and your takeaway from it, by the way, the pastor's white. If your takeaway from it is, oh, this guy is being really mean to white people, rather than just pointing out, you know who's really suffering right now? People who don't look like us.
Yeah.
People who are part of marginalized communities, which is true. Like, I think, was it just today, Trump announced he's going to set up some task force to protect Christians. Yeah, because that's
Onward, Christian soldiers.
That's the group that's really suffering right now.
Idiots.
Yeah. So these people are not looking for a new pastor. They're looking for an excuse to be like openly racist and bigoted, and they want a pastor who will give them permission to do it. In which case, they should find that Southern Baptist or white evangelical megachurch that will gladly embrace their faith-based hate. There are plenty to choose from. Like, it seems ridiculous to go to an openly inclusive church and then whine about inclusivity.
Right.
If your takeaway from criticisms of white Christian nationalism is, this is mean to white people, that's just you being dumb.
Right. I mean, and it's truly just one of those things that they're just saying the quiet part out loud again of like, oh, I want my Christianity to be like, you're doing a great job and you're so pretty and God likes you the most. But really what
and let's
church...
not talk about how this actually plays out in our world.
But like what church, my understanding from watching like Midnight Mass, but like it is supposed to be something of a like wake up call and a call to arms and hey, go forth in your week with this message in your heart. And is it too hard? Maybe it's too hard. Maybe they're just admitting that Christianity is too hard to do.
Or maybe they just don't like church themselves. They're looking for a pathway out.
That's actually a good excuse to leave. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, some of the complainers apparently, according to NPR, had a problem because Boswell put up a Black Lives Matter sign outside the church. And
but haven't all lives matter? Yeah. What about my life? My life isn't black. Does it matter?
Clearly. If you see Black Lives Matter and you think, well, you don't care about white people, again, that's a you problem. That's not the problem with the sign or the message.
It's so funny. These people who are like, oh, Black Lives Matter is unnecessary, blah, 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 blah. But they go to a neighborhood with 2 more black people than they're used to. And these motherfuckers are locking their doors and like, they're afraid and they are idiots to be afraid.
It makes you wonder what sort of encouragement are these church members looking for? What love are they missing? Because if caring for the least of these is too damn annoying for you, God forbid you listen to anything Jesus said, then they are welcome to go to a church where faith is used as a weapon against those groups, because that's apparently where their black hearts are at.
I mean, you know what it makes me think of is like when I go to therapy, I'm like in there and I'm doing the work and I'm crying on the couch and I'm talking about my parents and I'm doing all the things. And like, it's hard, but it's important so I can like live a better life for myself. But there's certainly people who go to therapy and are just like, yeah, no, things are fine. Just sort of have a really surface level chat. And they're like, yeah, therapy isn't helping me, but it's pretty easy. And I feel like that's what these people are looking for is like, oh, I can just go sit somewhere for an hour and be patted on the back and told I'm doing a good job and I'm a special little girl.
So for that point, one of the other complaints they had about this pastor is that he apparently didn't take care of his congregation well, though he disputes that. And here's what they mean by that. According to the former chairman of their board of deacons at this church, he said, most or all of the congregation supports social justice, quote, but for some people, being able to focus on social justice would be a welcome luxury because they have alcoholic spouses, they have children that are addicted, they have cancer, they have these personal needs. And apparently, when this pastor is talking about marginalized communities,
they're like, what about me?
Yeah, their response is, yeah, well, I have problems too. Have you ever thought about that? They should
find cool and chill. That's what I like about them.
They should find a therapist, not a pastor who's teaching them to live out the gospel message as he sees it. Truly, how privileged do you have to be mad at a sermon about social justice because it's not only talking about your personal issues?
Well, and also, if you're going to church to get answers for your alcoholic spouse or your kid who's struggling with addiction, I'm sorry, you're not going to fight like that. Maybe like one-on-one with a pastor, but a pastor is not an expert on addiction or whatever. Like you need to go
Go find
church
someone
can't
who
be
knows
all
what they're
things
doing.
to you. It
They
can't
want it to be, though. And by you talking about how we should care about gay people, you're ignoring my problems.
Yeah.
Now, one silver lining to all this is that once this guy was fired in November, 3 church leaders also resigned in protest. And when the story first broke in November, the Charlotte Observer spoke to one of those board members who resigned. His name is Tim Emery. And that guy just broke right through the church's spin.
Oh, thank Christ.
He said he doesn't think the stated reasons are the actual reasons that this guy got fired. During the Sunday meeting that was recorded and NPR got, he said the Board of Deacons chair allegedly made a comment about how this pastor was given chances to change his words and actions to appeal to a broader audience. Here's Emery. That struck me as heavily coded language. There's a lot of old white people at that church who are performatively liberal, who, when push comes to shove, are not comfortable talking about racial justice, are not comfortable with his coarse and confronting whiteness, are not comfortable with trans folks. And when the same reporters went to the Board of Deacons chair, like, her name is Marcy McClanahan, they went to her, they're like, what do you think about what this guy said about you? She was very mad.
Oh.
Here's what she said. I'll tell you on a personal level, it is incredibly insulting that Tim said that. I have a brown son. How dare you accuse this woman of being racist? She has a brown son. Clarence Thomas's wife, one of the most racist people in America, has a black husband. You would never, how dare you accuse that white supremacist of being against white. J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance. Holy shit, that's one of the funniest things I've heard in
Right?
such a long. A brown son.
Uh-huh.
Here's my own little brown
which
son.
is,
He's my brown prince.
like, I say that about my son because I'm joking. I cannot actually anticipate anyone who has a person, a son, a child of color, who literally says the word brown in a completely serious way.
Heaven's always like, my brown son's going to be a mathematician.
Right. Like, who's
My brown daughter's going to be a doctor.
Talks like that?
I have a brown son.
It's such
I
a
love it
weird
so
comment.
much.
So, I think Tim Emery, when he said what he did,
When I was in high school, all the Indian dudes made shirts that said Brown Squad, and they got in trouble.
Nice.
And that's too bad, because that was a really good goof.
that's pretty funny. This guy spoke the truth. Like, plenty of liberals
Maybe
like
it's a
saying
brown
they're
shirt
liberal.
problem.
They like saying they're liberal, but they don't actually want to follow through with their that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the people on the other side of that actually notice. Here's what another church member, Bruce Griffin, this is what he said after all this went down. When asked about the fact that some white congregants said they felt beaten down by Boswell's continued emphasis on social and racial justice, Griffin responded that as a black man, he felt beaten down every day. Griffin said he planned to leave this church.
Because he doesn't want to hear about the social
No,
justice
because
of it
he's
all?
like, if you're getting rid of that guy,
Gotcha. I thought he was
yeah.
leaving the church. I got you. That's...
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like, it's not to, like, use the word privilege all the time, but, like, the height of privilege to be like, you mean an hour a week I have to put myself in the shoes of the less fortunate? I hate it. It's the worst. Don't make me. I won't even watch the show Made because it makes me feel bad.
Why do you make me go to church when we're not going to talk about my personal issues?
Truly,
sure,
like-
there are hundreds, at least tens of people at this church. Why aren't you talking about only our issues? Isn't that what church is?
I sure do think.
Which also means, by the way, if you're talking about, forget social justice, if you're talking about the gospel message, these people wouldn't like that either because that's not about them. If you're talking about the 10 Commandments, you're not talking about their problem. So what exactly do they want this dude to speak about?
Do you know what just clicked with me is I feel like a lot of times in churches they talk about the poor, the less fortunate, the poor, as a sort of like over there conglomerate of people. But as soon as we're like, oh, well, the reason the poor exist, not unlike in Dickensian times, the poor exist because greedy people are greedy. And just to pretend that people become poor through some magical thing or whatever.
They're sinners.
They're sinners. They're bad. It wouldn't happen to me because I would never put myself in that position. That kind of bullshit is just useless and stupid. And if you go to church actually hoping to like understand the world better and just sort of see it with fresh eyes, maybe this is the way to do it. And if it makes you feel like, you have to feel uncomfortable sometimes. I think that's what it comes down to.
So
I feel
now,
uncomfortable almost all of the time.
I guess now mission accomplished for the church's leaders. Like, they didn't want to feel guilty. Now I guess they won't have to. They can focus on a broader message that just ignores political realities.
Well,
and I guess they can listen to messages that appeal to their white elderly members instead of the younger, maybe slightly more
Yeah.
open-minded people in the community whose families could eventually become permanent members of the church that has low attendance.
Like, no, we need to appease the 87-year-old racist lady.
Right.
Who's going to die
I don't
in
get this
18
as a
months.
strategic move. It doesn't make
Oh,
sense.
it's because they have lead poisoning and their brains are smooth like marbles.
There you go. If loving thy neighbor is just a slogan and not put into practice, it is worthless. But these people don't want to be challenged. They don't want their faith to direct their attention outside of their own bodies. It's the same reason so many conservatives who typically brag about how Christian they are, they got so damn offended a couple weeks ago when Reverend Buddy asked Donald Trump, follow Jesus, have mercy on the marginalized. And they're like, what? How dare
I hate
you?
this. Mercy, that's my least favorite thing.
Right. They don't care about Jesus. They just want the religious label for political power, which they can then use to hurt every group they feel is beneath them.
I mean, it's a very like Sneetches thing of like, it's the stars and the not stars, and they want to be stars because the stars are the good ones. And like, and it doesn't, nothing matters beyond the, like you said, the notation of Christian next to their name. Nothing matters. Their actions certainly don't matter. Oh, Sneetches.
Good times.
Sneetches, is that the right one?
I'm sure. I
Stars
haven't
Von
read
Lars?
that one. That one never got to me.
It was a cartoon I had.
Sure. Let's talk about a different story.
You don't want to talk about Sneetches
Not
more?
really.
Oh.
Let's talk about New Orleans and the Catholic Church, because this is a bombshell article that came out this
Really?
week in like 4 different news outlets, all of them working together on this story.
Really?
Yeah.
Like
So
local NOLA papers or national?
one local, The Guardian, The New York Times, The Associated
Whoa!
Press, everything. So
Okay,
here's
all
the
hands on deck.
backstory. Here's the backstory. In 2020, roughly 24 men sued the Archdiocese of New Orleans for allowing this one priest to work for them despite multiple allegations of sexual abuse.
Wow.
And this guy, allegedly, the claims against this guy stretched back to the 1970s. One allegation involved a little boy who said this guy fondled him at a Christmas party.
Oh my
He was
God.
removed from the ministry in 1988. But this guy was allowed to work as a lay minister until 2018, so he had access to kids for decades, even when the church knew what he was accused of. And so when this happened, they paid the survivors about $3 million to settle all the legal claims before the details were ever made public. But as that lawsuit worked its way through the legal system, the plaintiff's lawyers requested a whole bunch of documents from the Catholic Church through the process of discovery. And this is what we already knew. This is old news. But they found out that the church officials received a lot of help from, guess who? The New Orleans Saints. The football team.
The football team?
The people running the football team was helping the Catholic Church during all of this. Specifically, the team's Catholic owner, Gail Benson. Like 276 documents linked these two organizations. And there was also reason to believe that the team's like senior vice president of communications, Greg Bensel, was also helping the archdiocese. And at the time, both of these groups were like, we cannot let these documents be made public. They said the emails exchanged in 2018 and 2019 were intended to be private and should not be fodder for the public. And they were fighting against the release of these emails. But attorneys for the men who sued the church said multiple Saints personnel, including Greg Bensel, used their team email to advise church officials on messaging and how to soften the impact of the archdiocese's release of a list of clergy members who were credibly accused of sexual abuse.
I'm dying to know
So-
how many women were in that room.
So, just to put a finer point on this, the church was dealing with the sex abuse scandal, and they were about to release a list of clergy members who were accused of sexual abuse. And they're like, oh man, this is going to be bad news. Who can we go to help us? what's another corrupt organization that would know how to deal with the fallout from bad press? Probably the NFL.
An organization that also sacrifices young people's bodies for the
Yes.
greater profit of a bunch of rich white people.
Yep, so you would understand. And so they went to them, and the allegations were that they were helping them craft their message. Like, it is bad enough the Catholic Church.
So embarrassing.
Their focus is how do we make ourselves look good in the face of widespread sexual abuse. But it's even worse that anyone was like, let me give you some advice.
And also, you know who's going to help us with this? One of the largest industries in the fucking country and famously most corrupt.
Anyone who thinks the church's biggest problem is image and not the policies that fuel rampant child abuse should at the very least be publicly shamed. But now, this is why this is a breaking story this week. We finally know what's in those exchanges. They include, quote, 300 emails amounting to more than 700 pages and hundreds of internal emails between the saints people and the church leaders, including Archbishop Gregory Amond. And they show how vital the saints' advice was to the church. Specifically, and the articles, all of these various articles highlighted different things about this, but this is one from The Guardian. The Benson's Foundation, this lady who owns the Saints, her husband owned it. He died several years ago. Now she owns it. Their foundation has given tens of millions of dollars to the Archdiocese and other Catholic causes. Along the way, the Archbishop, Amond, he has flown on their private jet. He's become almost a part of the team, frequently celebrating pregame masses. So when the clergy abuse allegations came to a head, Bensel, the communications guy, worked his contacts in the local media to help shape the story. He had friendly email exchanges with a local columnist who praised the archbishop for releasing the clergy list. And then he asked the newspaper's leadership to keep their communications confidential, not for publication or to share with others. His emails reveal, this is crazy, the Advocate, big-time New Orleans newspaper, after the archbishop privately complained to the publisher, they removed a notice from one online article that said, if you're a clergy abuse victim, here's how you can reach out to people, like to get help or to be part of this lawsuit.
Shit.
They removed that notice altogether. Here's another thing.
Oh, that's above board.
The Saints executives got an advance copy of the list of clergy members accused of sexual abuse before it was made public in 2018, and they helped, quote, take certain people off the list.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Team president, Dennis Lauscha, he created a list of questions for Amond, the archbishop, to answer before he appeared in public, basically saying, hey, listen, I know PR. You're going to be asked a whole bunch of questions that you need to know how to answer. Let me help prep you for those media interviews you're about to do, because we know there's going to be backlash and people are going to want answers. Let me prepare you for that.
Like, at what point do these people have to take, like, the tiniest step back and be like, is this what God wants for me?
Oh, we're way
Is this
past
what God
that.
wants? Does God want me to make sure abuse victims can't find help?
I mean,
that
we're
doesn't
long past
feel
that.
like God.
At this point, religious labels are just to advance a political agenda.
It's pretty impressive the way they've done this.
Yes.
It's truly the greatest trick the devil ever pulled.
To her credit, one lawmaker, a Democrat, State Representative Mandy Landry, here's her quotation to all of this. This is disgusting.
Yeah, girl.
As a New Orleans resident, taxpayer, and Catholic, it doesn't make any sense to me why the Saints would go to these lengths to protect grown men who raped children. All of them should have been just as horrified at the allegations.
Mandy,
Yes.
I love you.
And what did the Saints executives say after all this? In a lengthy statement, the team criticized... Wait, who do you think?
Oh, the victims?
Close.
Gay people.
The media.
Oh.
The team criticized the media for using leaked emails for the purpose of misconstruing a well-intended effort.
A well-intended effort. And the
Yeah.
effort was, sorry, just to be clear, making sure the Catholic Church does not face any consequences for its
Right.
horrible behavior.
But then, don't worry.
Cool!
They added, no member of the Saints organization condones or wants to cover up the abuse that occurred in the Archdiocese.
Sure. Are you sure? Are you sure nobody wants to cover it up?
That abuse occurred is a terrible fact.
If only there was something anybody could do. We're all trying to find out who's doing this.
Or just not do. All you have to do is not respond to their emails. You could do that.
Oh my God.
By the way, 5 years ago, when this link between the two sides even came to light, even though we didn't have the emails, the team said their work with the church was, quote, minimal. And Gail Benson, the owner, she flat out denied that her team had any input regarding the list of predators. We know that was a lie.
I think thou shalt not bear false witnesses on the top 10.
I don't think they care what the Bible actually says.
Noted.
Yes. So what's also disturbing, is that it wasn't just getting help from the saints. The church also got input from other government officials, including a federal judge appointed by George W. Bush. U.S. District Court Judge Jay Zaney, who was copied by the saints on the PR...
Judge Zaney?
There you go.
It's like a fucking radio DJ in the 80s.
He was copied by the saints on the PR efforts. He cheered Bensel, the communications guy, from his personal email account, thanking that guy, quote, for the wonderful advice that he gave to the church. And a newspaper editor also thanked Bensel for getting involved. Here's what Zaney said. "You have hit all the points." Zaney, a fellow Catholic, wrote in another email to Bensel, "By his example and leadership, Archbishop Amond, our shepherd, will continue to lead our church in the right direction. ... And by the way, that dude, Zaney, he later struck down a Louisiana law that the church opposed that would have allowed victims to bring civil claims irrespective of how long ago the alleged sex abuse took place.
Well, yeah,
so they wanted
those
to get
poor priests don't have any
rid
money.
of the statute of limitations, and this guy's like, come on now, if you got abused
That's
years ago,
silly.
you
Get
can't
over
get over
it.
it. You can't bring a lawsuit about that.
I don't like these people.
So, bottom line, a group of powerful and wealthy people use their resources to protect another group of powerful and wealthy people, calling themselves the Catholic Church, from fallout over child sex abuse. That's what this is all about.
Cool.
By the way, Amon, the Archbishop, he referred to one of the reporters working on these stories as, quote, Satan. And we know that because of a text message to a third party that was obtained by the writer. Love it.
Huh.
So, if you've ever wondered how the Catholic Church could get away with so much abuse for so long, I mean, this is
goes
why
all the way to the top.
They have powerful friends eager to help them shield their crimes. These wealthy Catholics heard about child abuse committed by church officials and then wondered how they could help the abusers. Anyway, the Super Bowl is going to be hosted in New Orleans this weekend.
Is it real?
So,
Oh, is it this weekend?
Yep.
Oh, boy. What are you going to do this weekend?
I mean, watch the ads, I guess. What else do I do?
I don't know. Mikey and I got in a habit for a long time of like going to see a play or something really
that would
pretentious
require
on Super
leaving the
Bowl.
house. I'm not doing that on
Sorry
a
about
Sunday.
that. Maybe there's a Survivor marathon on that you can catch.
You know what's sad about this? Not only
You have
is
no
the
friends.
that too. Not only is the new season launching later this month,
Oh, we're back on Survivor.
but the Australian version, which is always better than the US version, is also launching this month. It's so much. It's
Wait,
great.
Why
Don't
is
worry
the
about
Australian version better? It's just because they're fucking scrappy?
Yeah, and the storylines are better.
They're all descended from criminals?
More episodes, weirder twists, and the cinematography is beautiful.
Is it? Oh,
Telling
that's
you.
dope. I love it.
Gorgeous. All right. Anyway, let's talk about. Okay, here's the story. I was looking at an article about a proposed Texas law.
Oh, boy.
And I saw the article. It's like, well, this law is being proposed and it would be religion in schools, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
So I started reading the bill where I'm like, yep, this is pretty disturbing. And I made my way to the bottom of the bill and I'm like, wait, the article that I just read didn't even mention this part of the bill. And I asked a guy who does church-state separation work, I'm like, am I reading this wrong? Because this seems way more concerning.
Like there's something you found in the bill that was not in the sort of headline?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, this seems way more disturbing than the top part.
Okay.
I'm like, am I misreading this or what? And he's like, oh, no, that's definitely way more disturbing.
All right, hit me.
Okay, so here's the story. This is a bill proposed by Texas Republicans, and it would allow public school boards to set aside some time each day for students to read the Bible and pray. That's what the bill does.
I didn't even get time to like sit and read the Saddle Club and pray.
Uh-huh. No, adherents of other religions are free to participate, but the bill makes clear, nah, it's all about Christianity, and everyone else, if you want to come along for the ride, you can. But here's the deal. HB 1425 has a lot of caveats to avoid any inevitable lawsuits, but the short version is it would allow school boards to adopt a policy forcing all schools in the district to provide a period of prayer and reading of the Bible or other religious text. Like the Bible and then whatever the hell else y'all people want to read.
What are you guys, like Dr. Seuss? I don't know.
So
Lord of the Rings?
it doesn't force them to do it, but it says you can if you want to,
But
I
can't
guess.
I always read the Bible and pray in class?
You can. This is a completely useless bill because anyone can already do this.
I mean, I read all of the picture of Dorian Gray in the back of my statistics class, so clearly people are not paying that much attention
Even
in high
weirder,
school.
not only is this voluntary for the school boards, all of this would occur before the start of the school day. So it's like, well, why do you even need a bill for this? Because
Then
everyone
just
can
go to
already
church
do
before
it.
school, dog.
You could. All students who want to participate
Early
in
bird
like
church.
Bible reading time before school, they would have to have a permission slip signed by their parents. Employees could choose if they wanted to participate as well. No one's forced to do it. And the permission slip would acknowledge that you're not going to be bothered if, say, someone else was praying next to you and you promise you're not going to sue over this law because, like, I don't know why. Maybe there's a Muslim who's in the room with you doing a prayer.
And the Muslim would
I
sue,
don't
or
know.
you'd sue the Muslim?
I have no idea. So this bill just creates a problem where none exists because, again, you can always read the Bible before or after school. You could have
During
a Bible
school.
club. You could read it during school as long as it's not disruptive with your classes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fine. So I don't know why this is necessary, except to say you would only ask that if you don't understand Christian nationalism. Because even if students can already read the Bible and they can already silently pray whenever they want to.
They don't have a special rule carved out for them.
Right. All this bill does is create another way to show Texans that their lawmakers prioritize Christianity. It's
Or
a
for
culture
them not
war
freezing
bill.
to death in their home.
Yeah. Like it also forces this is another interesting thing. This
Great.
bill would force every public school district to vote on whether or not you want this policy. Why do you want to why are you forcing them to vote on whether or not to adopt this policy?
To get them on public record.
To get them on public record so that conservatives can use it as ammo against board members if they said no to this. Yeah. Now, it's all symbolic. It's all performative. That's all this is. Okay. But there's another part of this bill. That's obviously that's the part that made headlines.
Right.
But if you look at the actual bill, there was one little passage later on in the bill, because it said, we're going to include this new law that creates this possible time period to pray before school, whatever. And then later in the bill, it's like, we're going to also modify the current law.
Oh.
And we're just going to change one thing.
Let's see.
Okay, so right now, Texas law says students have a right to silently pray or meditate, which is fine, but the law includes this line. A person may not require, encourage, or coerce a student to engage in or refrain from such prayer or meditation during any school activity. And that's also fine.
That was taken out or put in?
No, that's in the law as
okay.
it stands right now.
Okay.
Like, yeah, no one can tell you to do
Have
this
to
or not
read the
do this or
Bible.
whatever.
Yeah.
Here's what the new bill would do. It crosses out the word encourage in the law.
Okay.
So what that would mean is the law, if passed, it would change. If this bill passes, the new law would be a person, like a teacher or an administrator, may not require or coerce a student to engage in or refrain from such prayer or
But they
medication.
can
But they
encourage.
could encourage them to do it.
Well, that's fucking sneaky.
Right? Like, that to me
These
is far
people.
more damaging than allowing voluntary prayer and Bible reading before school, because encouraging them to do that stuff could occur during instructional hours and at school events with a captive audience of kids, right?
That's wild. That is
Now-
so obvious.
Technically, the way it's worded, that also means teachers and administrators could encourage students to refrain from praying, which just strikes me as kind of funny. Not that anyone would do it, but hilarious. Like, you could have an atheist teacher saying, hey, kids,
Yeah.
I don't want you to pray. And that would be protected by Texas law accidentally.
Or they could be like, hey, let's flip to Revelations. Who can draw a biblically accurate angel?
So I asked Chris Line.
That class.
Oh my God. I asked Chris Line, who's an attorney with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm like, am I misreading this?
Yeah.
Like, this is weird, right? He said, Students are already free to pray or meditate privately on their own time, but it is wholly inappropriate for government employees, teachers, and administrators to actively encourage religious practices in an official capacity as this proposed change would allow. It is clear that this is intended to muddy the waters and allow school staff members to claim that their attempts to coerce or pressure students into participating in prayer are simply encouragements. And none of the media coverage mentioned this encouragement part of the bill.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
times.
And it's funny that they include meditation in there because I feel like when I was growing up and yoga was getting really big and going into schools, people were like, hold the fucking phone on this. Like, what is this meditation bullshit? It sounds magical. What is yoga? It sounds foreign.
They literally had there were so many states that had giant hissy fits over stretching.
It's
Because they said it was blasphemy somehow to teach them under the guise of yoga, basically telling kids, here's how you could stretch out.
like, yeah, I remember the thing that I think Christians super depend on and often get is a really short memory. Because truly, like, if you go back and I have a true fascination with moral panics across the years. It's just one of the things that I find most fascinating, mostly because it happens every 10 years or so. And everyone's like, this is the first time we've ever faced anything like the Negro problem or the Jewish problem or the trans problem or D&D or yoga or Sesame Street is too satanic because there's a vampire in it or whatever. Like they love to grab onto little tiny things and make a huge fucking deal about it. And then when they get the chance, they're like, oh, we're just going to go ahead and do anything we want because anything we say is good is good. Anything we say is bad. And so they're the arbiters of this decision, right? Like they're the arbiters of is yoga good or bad? Like, why do we let them decide these things? Partner and your gay roommates, what are they going to do about it?
I hear you.
I just don't like them, Hemant,
I
is the
know.
problem. Is the main problem.
We're going to go to Canada now.
Oh, yay. I
If
like
only.
Canada.
If
Maple
only.
syrup.
There you go.
Moose.
So last November,
Timmy's.
outside of Toronto, there's a town called Cobourg. And last November, the Cobourg Town Council members, they approved a resolution that designated December as Christian Heritage Month. And the way that happened, this isn't even the big deal.
Canada?
Like, a resident requested it. I think in their minds, they're not privy to culture war bullshit as much. So they're like, oh, yeah, like that seems harmless and it's all symbolic, so why not? So they approved it.
I feel like maybe Canadians need to take a peek into their past history before they start
That
celebrating
too.
Christianity because a lot of
By
people
the
are
way,
dead because of them.
I looked at the minutes from their meeting and it just says, like, council approved the request for December to be proclaimed Christian Heritage Month. Apparently, this is for 5 years. I didn't see that anywhere in the list or in the documentation, but apparently it was a 5-year thing.
Christian
we want
Heritage
every
Month coming
December.
2030.
Yeah, we want every December to be Christian Heritage Month.
It already is. It's Christmas month.
I know. Anyway, so there's an atheist in that community, Bob LeDrew, and he's like, well, if you're going to do that, I can play the same game. So he's like, he went to the same council. He said, I would like you to designate March 23rd as Atheist Awareness Day. And this is one of those things where it's obviously symbolic and random, but it has actually been done around the world.
Is March 23rd symbolic of something?
I'm sure it is. If
Darwin's
it's
birthday?
on Wikipedia, like there's a whole day for it, I believe.
Okay.
But the point is, he's like, well, if you're going to do a Christian Heritage Month, all right, fine. I want you to proclaim March 23rd Atheist Awareness Day.
Oh, March 23rd.
But when he made that proposal, his request was denied because, according to the city council staffers, he was told, excuse me, our policies say we cannot issue proclamations involving, quote, religious organizations or the celebration of religious events.
Huh.
And he's like, wait a minute, back up for a second, because what is Christian Heritage Month then? Did that one violate your policies or not? And also, he said, by this logic, atheism isn't a religion, so I'm on even firmer ground for you to say yes to me than you were to the Christian Heritage Month.
Yeah.
So why are you honoring Christianity but not atheism? So either, here's what Bob LeDrew said, either you need to abide by your own policies or just accept my proposal to honor atheists. So he actually submitted a formal request to present his case to the council. Like, okay, you denied my thing, but hey, I can request to make public comments about this.
Right.
So he did. And he said, like, in his, like, let me speak at your meeting, he wrote, a third of Canadians identify as non-religious, a doubling in 20 years. With Council declaring Christian Heritage Month in December 2024, it should recognize the large proportion of non-theists that exist.
Yeah.
And so...
And people are mad about it?
Yeah, whatever. And he sent an email. There was actually another email sent to city council officials that highlighted the hypocrisy of all this.
Wow.
Pointing out that, yeah, you can't say yes to one, but not the other. What the hell? And this third-party email said staff and council should admit to the error and reaffirm that staff and council will abide by the policy.
Hey, guys, admitting you're wrong goes so fucking far.
So last week, Bob LeDrew spoke to the council members and made his case. He said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but you screwed up when you approved the Christian proclamation. You should accept mine because it's not a religion, and it's not subject to the prohibitions on religious proclamations. But he said issuing any kind of pro-religion statements is a slap in the face to the increasing number of non-religious people in the community. And he actually said, I agree with the town's policy. You should not honor religious anything. I just want you to enforce it. Here's what he said. I'm in strong agreement with that policy. I think government is best done as a secular organization. Like, they are now going to feel that they have a right. If one has the right, then we all have that right. And so I was watching the way they were doing this meeting. He spoke for a couple of minutes. And then for some reason, I think this was a mistake on their part. The sound just cuts off so you can't hear their discussion.
Oh, interesting.
And I do think it was a mistake. But you can see what they're writing, like on their document, because it's up there for the public to see. And you can basically watch them going back to the proclamation that they did for the Christian Heritage Month and amending it in real time. And you can basically see them rescinding the Christian Heritage Month proclamation.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what they did. They did not approve his Atheist Awareness Day proclamation, but they went back and undid the Christian Heritage Month.
Yeah, that's why it should go. Good for him.
Right?
Like, he did it.
Right. So
he did the thing.
I spoke to him about this. I'm like, so what is this a victory? What's the deal? Here's what he told me. He said, to be frank, I didn't much care if March 23rd was proclaimed or not. My real goal was to make it clear that going against the town's policy opened the door to something that's really counterproductive, and that they should have made a decision that followed through the logic of the policy, which if you read it is quite sensible. So going through what he said this was the best possible outcome. I believe the council will be far more thoughtful should some other proclamation request come before them in the future, and that's all I can ask for.
Hey,
and he made sure
that's
to
how
tell
it's
me.
supposed to work.
Yeah, he also told me he felt he was treated with respect and courtesy by everyone involved. But it is kind of incredible to me how all it took was a simple nudge about equality to make the council members realize they had made a mistake and to correct themselves moving forward, because rescinding the Christian proclamation is not anti-religious. It's just an acknowledgement that we screwed up when we approved this proclamation because it violates our own rules, and they didn't realize that until an atheist asked for the exact same thing. So good for him for making that clear to them, and hopefully they won't make that mistake again in the future. I got one last story for you here, and this one involves Alabama. This just happened like yesterday, but Alabama is now the latest state to try to get the 10 Commandments in public schools, and not surprisingly, Republicans feel pretty good that they can get this done. But it's amusing this is happening in Alabama because that's been kind of ground zero for all the 10 Commandment shit we're seeing everywhere. I was shocked when I saw this. Do you remember when Roy Moore was Chief Justice of their Supreme Court?
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Oh, my God.
He installed a giant 10 Commandments monument in the Supreme Court of Alabama's courthouse in the middle of the night. And then, do you remember that?
No.
Oh, my God. It was all the rage. And then when he was told to remove it, he's like, no. And he eventually defied court orders, and he pretended he was a Christian martyr for all this. And eventually, it got so bad that the 8 other justices on the Supreme Court are like, dude, that monument has to go.
No.
And then not long after that, Roy Moore was removed from his seat altogether for not following the law, which you kind of have to do if you're a Supreme Court justice.
Wait, is he the same one who molested all the children?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that this isn't just the worst person in the world.
Oh, yeah. So that happened like 25 years ago. In 2012, he decided to run for his seat again to be Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court.
Is that when he came back under the radar?
He got elected to Chief Justice, and then riding that high, a few years later, he's like, I'm going to run for Senate.
That's
and
right.
And that's when he was outed as a Christian child sex predator. Yeah. And then he's after he lost that easily winnable race to Doug Jones at the time, he kind of has been off the radar forever, right? Like how much have we heard from Roy Moore ever since then?
Not much.
Not much. It's been great. So anyway, all that happened with Roy Moore. That's why this is like ground zero, because this dude tried to push the 10 Commandments, and they were like,
when Alabama is like, dog, like, give it up.
Right?
That's bad.
But then in 2018, Republicans were like, well, why don't we just put this to voters? And they actually put a measure on their ballot in 2018 saying, can we pass a constitutional amendment that would, quote, allow display of the 10 Commandments in schools and on other public property. And also, we're also going to ban the use of any public funds to defend those displays in court. So no taxpayer money will be used to fight this battle. But also, you could totally put this up in your public schools. And 72% of Alabama voters said, that sounds like a great idea. But the weird thing about this is, even though this passed and they got a state constitutional change to allow the 10 Commandments in schools and courthouses and stuff, because the state said, we're not going to give you money to defend this in court, every person's like, well, should we put it in our school district then? Well, we will get sued over it.
No.
And the state's not going to help us fight this in court. So why would we do that? It's a dumb idea.
I don't think Alabama is like has an embarrassment of wealth with which they can defend themselves.
And so the weird thing is, even though in 2018 they passed a law literally permitting the 10 Commandments in schools, as far as I could tell, that has not happened because they know they would get sued over it and they don't want to waste their money.
Well, and also, who's paying to put the 10 Commandments in there? Like,
they could get private donors if they wanted to.
Okay, I was going to say,
but they would get sued over it and they would lose that lawsuit.
Maybe those private donors will kick in.
I'm sure. I mean, that's the way you would have to go about this if you're the Christian nationalist.
Well, apparently, in addition to all this, Alabama, like Southern Alabama along the Gulf Coast, is apparently like the new like MAGA hotspot. I know this
as opposed to the rest of Alabama, which is.
But like I'm talking like very, very wealthy people who are MAGA, like the same as like the Florida contingency. Like I know people in my life who are rich, terrible MAGA people just moved down there from Chicago, moved to Alabama so they could be racist. Easier.
Congrats.
Isn't that nice of them?
Enjoy the weather.
I tried to sit down with this woman once because she was like a captain of industry, and I was like, hey, I would love to talk to a woman. And she was just like, I never got treated any different as a woman, and you shouldn't either. And I was like, oh, thanks for the advice. And I've never gotten treated differently for being a woman ever again.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So on Wednesday of this week, 22 Republicans in the state legislature, led by a guy named Mark Gidley, who's one of their state representatives, and it also happens to be a pastor at a church, they filed a bill that would now force schools to put the 10 Commandments up. So, because they realized this constitutional change that we got like in 2018 did jack for us. Now, because they said, hey, schools, you have the permission. You can do it if you want to. Why aren't any of you doing it? Because it's illegal. Now they're trying to pass a bill saying, all right, well, then we're going to make you put it up.
But what about lawsuits?
Yes, we'll talk about the lawsuits.
Okay.
But this bill, if passed, it would create a new law requiring school boards to display the 10 Commandments in each school under their jurisdiction by January of next year. The displays could go up at the school's entrances or like common areas like the library, which I did not know they have those in those schools. But it also tells them this is what every display has to say. We listed out the 10 Commandments for you. And And remember Louisiana tried passing a law enforcing the Ten Commandments in public schools, and then they got sued over it. They passed that law. They got sued over it. A federal judge is like, yeah, this is completely illegal. What the hell is wrong with all of you? And now where we're at right now is that Louisiana's appealed that decision, and they're hoping to reach the Supreme Court. But right now, this Alabama bill just copies everything they did in Louisiana. So they say,
because it worked well there.
Because it so worked well there. They say, by the way, when you put up these displays of the Ten Commandments, you also need to include a disclaimer. And the disclaimer, which they also spell out, it's like 3 paragraphs long. No one's ever going to read it. But it goes through like, you guys, the Ten Commandments have been a part of public education for centuries. It was in books in the year 1688. It was in the McGuffey Readers, which was popular in the early 1800s. Noah Webster cited it in his books. The thing is, one, they did all this in Louisiana. No one cared. And the problem with this argument, you're trying to make a case that this isn't about pushing Christianity. This is just American history. And it's always been a part of education. The problem is that's a lie.
Yeah.
That New England primer book from the 1600s, that was used in religious schools long before the rise of public education. And
more importantly, that same printer offered to print Bibles specifically for Congress. And they're like, no, thank you, please. We don't want that. And somehow David Barton forgets that part every fucking time he tells the story.
The McGuffey Readers include a story about the Ten Commandments.
A story about, God, how boring.
Like, it's a story in the middle of a lot of things, but other more updated versions don't include that story. And again, there's all sorts of reasons these books have gone out of style over the past century, and we never use them anymore. And when the lawyers on the church-state separation side argued against the Louisiana law, they cited this disclaimer that Louisiana tried to put up in their Ten Commandments case. And the lawyers argued there is no evidence of a long-standing, let alone unbroken, historical acceptance and practice of widespread permanent displays of the Ten Commandments in public schools. So the reason the law cites some old textbooks used before America became religiously diverse and before we adopted public education and before we knew how like evolution and toilets worked is because that's the only history they can cite in their defense. And even then, those textbooks didn't say, let's put the Ten Commandments in the classrooms. They weren't even significant texts in those books. So they were not prominent. They were not in public schools. They were not on the walls. So I don't know what the point of the disclaimer is. And then if you want any more proof that this bill is all about pushing Christianity, the bill in Alabama also says, listen, school boards, if you want to, you have the option of putting up other displays like the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, and the Northwest Ordinance, all of which
Northwest Ordinance?
Yeah, all of which mention God vaguely, but also those are optional. You don't have to put those other things up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my third graders don't want to read the Mayflower Compact on their wall.
It's just not that fun. But like that word choice negates the entire section. If you're forced to put up the Christian text, but you have the option of putting up ostensibly secular documents that still make references to God, you've got a bill promoting Christianity.
Like, I know I say this every week, but like, isn't there something better they could be doing with their time and resources?
What are they going to do? Worry about healthcare?
Like, truly, like, how I would love to see how much money is spent on these measures, not just the lawsuits. I'm talking all of the man hours and all of the meetings and all of the communications and paying people for art. They don't pay people for art. They make it themselves because they're terrible. I just want to know how much money has sunk into the state of Alabama not being able to put up posters on their wall. Like, whereas that money could have gone to any number of places, one might think. I'm sure there's maybe some poor people in Alabama who could have used that fiduciary assistance. But no. You want to make sure that everybody knows that you shouldn't take the Lord's name in vain in first grade.
Yeah.
And that's more important question. And also, here's the other thing. They're so fucking obsessed with the Ten Commandments, and they lie all the time about everything. So they don't even believe in their own bullshit.
Oh, no.
And that's what kind of makes me crazy. Is like, I just want to know, what is it about the Ten Commandments that you need up there that like
I'll
is so
answer that
important.
for you in a second.
Good, because like truly, I don't think my teachers should care if I honor my mother.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily her business.
The bill also says no school has to pay for any of this because they can use donated funds or donated displays.
Oh, thank you.
But that also creates a problem since school officials would then have to approve or reject various donations, which could lead to other legal problems. And to the point we made earlier, who's going to pay for the lawsuits once this happens? And the bill just doesn't mention it, thinking if we don't talk about it, nothing can happen.
Well, yeah, they expect us to be goldfish.
So Alabama Republicans want to force school districts to do something illegal, and then they're running away the second those school districts get sued as a result. And they will be sued because they got sued in Louisiana, and that's already been deemed unconstitutional, the Louisiana law.
I mean, this is just every cult, it's every pyramid scheme, it's everything. It's hey, let's all do this thing and it's going to be great for everybody. It might be dangerous, but that's the point. We're brave warriors. And then when the rubber hits the road, they're like, fucking sucks to suck, dog. I wish somebody could help you.
I wonder if they're thinking if we wait till January of next year to implement this law, even if it passes, maybe by then the Supreme Court will have taken this up and allowed the promotion of Christianity in public institutions.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe that's the logic here. Governor Kay Ivey's spokeswoman said to a local reporter, like, why are we doing this? Here's what the spokeswoman said. The United States of America was founded as one nation under God. It was not.
It was not.
And it is important for our students to understand through key documents like the Ten Commandments, the Declaration of Independence, and Bill of Rights, to name a few. First of all, Bill of Rights doesn't come up in the bill. And the Declaration of Independence, like we said, that one's optional. So why are we mentioning that?
Because they're idiots.
Yep. And then the spokeswoman said, the governor has long been a supporter of displaying the Ten Commandments in public places, and doing so, along with other founding articles, is the right way to do it. Which doesn't make any sense because the other founding articles are optional. So what the hell?
Here's my question. This is always my question. This is like the number one question I want answered in the entire world. Is she eyes open or eyes closed? Does she genuinely believe that she is doing really good for her community and this is a way to do it? Or is she, as I suspect, a slithering, slippery eel of a person who would say...
Kay Ivey has a reputation for being like the intellectual governor.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Kudos to at least to the state's Democratic Party, all four of them. They did not mince words about this. The Alabama Democratic Party said the focus on the Ten Commandments is an example of Republican efforts to turn the U.S. into a Christo-fascist ethno-state.
I think it's Christo-fascist.
Christo-fascist?
I think so.
There we go. While ignoring the Constitution, the will of the founders, and the rule of law.
Yeah.
Very nice.
You got it.
By the way, I was listening, Gidley, the guy who's sponsoring this bill, he spoke at the Eagle Forum of Alabama this week, and he basically said, you guys, I'm not trying to put religion back into the public sphere, but I'm trying to return what was there originally. And this is an actual thing he said in this speech. Wait for it. Can you imagine all the school shootings we've had in the last 25 or 26 years? Could you imagine if a child walked down the hallway and saw on the wall there that says, thou shalt not kill? Would it might have had an impact? And then quickly he realizes this is a stupid thing to say because he says, oh, I'm not sure that would, but I would tell you something. Putting God back there will, because God is not cursing us because of what we've done. He just said, quote, get me out of the way and see what happens.
Now, as somebody who's done this myself, I recognize when somebody's going down a rhetorical path, realizes it's not working, and hits reverse really hard.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, of course, I didn't mean all white men should die. I mean, just like maybe there's, of course, that's not it. But I just think if white men thought they could die, they might.
He reversed and then doubled down on his original thing.
What a fucking dum-dum.
Yeah. This guy will never do anything to prevent the spread of semi-automatic weapons, but he's like, 10 Commandments could fix all of our problems in Alabama. There you go.
Fuck, man. This sucks.
Good times.
Was that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
What do we have to look forward to in the bonus?
Well, I'm starting to take, and I would love to encourage others to do this. I'm starting to take classes at my local community college. CUD is in Glen Ellen near us. And this is the second time I went to a lunch lecture that they had And this one is about a piece of art called The Dinner Party. It was created by Judy Chicago, which is such an outstanding name. I can't believe it. And it is essentially a huge art installation that is meant to honor the women who've been forgotten and cut out of history. I would highly recommend looking into it. It was really, really interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And then there was something else I wanted to tell you about, but I can't remember right now. Do you have anything you want to share with me, Jessica?
I have absolutely nothing, or I'll figure it out while I'm saving everything else.
All right, let's see.
You can also go leave a review at
we have a new
iTunes.
review.
What's the review say?
Okay, it's called The Dynamic Duo. It's from Brown Bomb.
I missed that.
Fucking full circle, dog. Between Jessica's gasps as shocks and Heaven's Kermit sounding I can't get enough. I finally subscribed to the Patreon so I could listen to the bonus episode. Thank you both for hosting such a great show. Oh, by the way, Jessica, Satan does love that outfit. I love it. That made me so happy. Between that and this trophy, will you read the trophy that I received in the mail today?
The trophy says, Jess read a huge book.
And we'll be talking about that in the bonus as well.
All right, we'll see you all next week. Bye.